Upstate Medical University in Syracuse, New York invites you to be the informed patient with the podcast that features experts from Central New York's only academic medical center. I'm your host, Amber Smith. Many patients hear from their doctors about the importance of selecting and eating healthy foods, but then they go to the grocery store and have to navigate a series of health claims on packaging. Today, I'm talking with a pair of researchers who set out to figure out if food packaging health claims will direct people to healthy foods. Dr. Joshua Steinberg is an assistant professor in family medicine at Upstate, and Shruti Venkatesh is a student in Upstate's Norton College of Medicine. Welcome both of you to The Informed Patient.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Dr. Steinberg, do you find yourself telling patients to eat healthy foods?
All the time. I'm in primary care, and we're seeing patients face the big challenges in primary care, the ones that are so harmful over the long term, such as high blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, obesity, so many of these important conditions. And exercise is helpful, but there's no way around it. Diet is profoundly important for the well-being of our patients and for the good management of these important conditions. So I find myself and my colleagues, we're constantly using all of our strategizing to nudge and invite and educate and negotiate and problem solve and connect patients with dietitians, every way that we can help them make good choices and improve their nutrition.
How do you define what a healthy food is?
Well, this is an important question, especially as regards our study. There are a lot of different ways to define healthy foods. And, in some ways, nutrition is real simple. It's not too much more complicated than what we learned in grade school about fruits and vegetables and varied diet and not too much of the chips and all that stuff. On the other hand, we have a scientific bent and we have a knowledge of what foods work and what biochemical pathways and influence diseases to certain extents. And it gives us the idea that nutrition is very scientific. So there's a tension in medicine about what is healthy food and how sophisticated do you have to think about it in order to identify healthy foods. I think that the best way to reach patients is to reach them where they're at. And so I don't think talking to them about free fatty acids and polyunsaturated fats and milligrams or milliequivalents of sodium and potassium is going to resonate and help them, an hour later or a week later in the grocery store or at a lunch counter as they choose what to eat. So I try to stick to things that are familiar and clear and simple. For the sake of our study, we did have to define healthy food. And that was actually hard because there are so many different aspects to what could make a food healthy or unhealthy. And we needed something really reductionist, right? There's no way to score a food with a number and capture all of the dimensions of how healthy it is. But we tried to do it anyway, because to make a study like this, to try to make a correlation, we had to choose a way of ranking the healthiness of foods. And we thought of a lot of ways, even including Weight Watchers points and all kinds of things that are probably proprietary and we probably couldn't get access to. But we were fortunate to come across a scheme that is used in Europe in several countries and has an endorsement from the World Health Organization. And that scheme is called Nutri-Score. And Nutri-Score looks at a few core elements that contribute to the healthiness or unhealthiness of how a food contributes to your health. And these are things that most patients would identify and not be surprised to hear about, like salt and sugar and fat, things like that. So admittedly, there's a lot of sophistication that can be in nutrition, and And we had to oversimplify it a bit, but I think we chose a reasonably valid approach and one that few people would argue with. I don't think that this Nutri-Score system would label an unhealthy food as surprisingly healthy or vice versa. So that's how we approached trying to conceive of and then define healthiness for our investigation.
Well, let me ask Ms. Venkatesh, what is your experience as a busy medical student trying to eat healthy? Has it been challenging, or do you have some tricks that you're using?
I can't lie. I will say it is very challenging, especially within the first couple weeks of just trying to adjust to the lifestyle of medical school. I found it really tempting to just, grab a granola bar in the morning or just have like a PB&J for lunch and just get right back into studying and keep on going and going. But, at the end of the day, medicine is just a long-term learning experience. And so I've really had to learn to step back for myself in order to be a good student. I need to be able to eat healthier so that my brain and my body can be in the best shape as possible for studying. So now what I like to do is I like to go in the grocery store and just get a variety of foods, but they simply cover each of those core aspects that Dr. Steinberg just mentioned that we've learned in grade school of making sure I get a good amount of protein, like some chicken for lunch and dinner, and then veggies and fruits, a different one each time that I go into the grocery store so that I could eat something a little bit different throughout the week. I also really like to mix and match how I prepare each of those foods. So it's not like I'm eating the same thing every day, but the ways in which I prepare it make it a little bit more enjoyable. But it also gets the point across for myself of making sure that I'm eating the right things for my body and make me feel pretty good for when I'm ready to like tackle on a lot of material and be able to adjust through the lifestyle of what it takes to be a good medical student.
Well, let me ask you, when you were doing your study, how and why did you analyze the front of the product packaging?
I think for just a general consumer, that is what you end up seeing in the grocery store is just being attracted to whatever is on the front label of that package, which I think, is really interesting as whether or not if it was a marketing tactic or what our city looked into was whether or not those claims that were being made on the front packaging were actually correlated to that of their overall nutrition. So the claims that we were actually able to look at were nutrient content claims, function claims, and health claims. And each of those were based off of the US FDA guidelines. And so I'll just briefly clarify what each of those claims are. So nutrient content claims are things like high in fiber or it's free in sugar, and they describe those overall nutrient levels, while function claims go on to say a small statement about the general health benefits without giving like a direct specification of what it's doing. So something like supporting immune health is a function claim. The last one is called FDA restricted claims. So essentially, what these do are describing the substance or condition of the given product without claiming to diagnose or treat a given disease per se. What we ended up finding throughout the front packaging were that the nutrient content claims that were describing like things high in fiber, low in sugar were really, really prevalent. And we wanted to see whether or not those really correlated with the overall nutritional value of the foods, or if it's kind of just like a sticker and you can just take it off and it doesn't really support whether or not the food is actually healthy or not.
And the reason that we had this question is there was a best-selling book almost 20 years ago from a journalist, Michael Pollan, called The Omnivore's Dilemma. Marvelous book, so thoughtful and in-depth about what it takes for the nutrition of and healthiness of farming and communities and business and economy and people and populations. And so, tremendous book. In it, he gave some recommendations about healthy eating. And one of them was quite clever. He said, you should avoid eating the foods that have the most claims of being healthy, because they're trying to fool you, and don't be fooled. Whereas the foods that don't announce how healthy they are, they're the best for you, like fruits and vegetables that typically don't have packaging. They're just piled, in the fresh food section when you enter a supermarket. And he had a famous line about this. He said, "Do not be fooled by the humble sweet potato. Don't let the silence of the yams make you lose sight of how healthy they are." And the point is, the children's cereal boxes are littered with all kinds of claims, fortified with 17 vitamins, minerals, nutrients, all that kind of stuff. And yet the healthy stuff doesn't tell you how healthy it is. And so it was a very clever line in a very popular book, and for good reasons. But it didn't have a footnote. No one seemed to investigate it. And so I thought, this seems like such a question, so easy to empirically evaluate, right? Everyone wants the attention of a shopper with the money in his or her wallet. And so they're all competing for our attention with color and flavor and exciting labels. And Pollen says they're competing with health claims as well. So we decided to see whether the unhealthiest foods really had the most claims, or whether the healthiest foods had the most claims, or maybe it was just a big scatter and there was no association. But it made for a delightful line, and therefore a good question that seemed like we could probably answer it by just going to a supermarket.
You're listening to Upstate's The Informed Patient podcast. I'm your host, Amber Smith. I'm talking with Dr. Joshua Steinberg, an assistant professor in family medicine at Upstate, and Shruti Venkatesh, a student in Upstate's Norton College of Medicine. Now, I understand that you analyzed almost 600 grocery items. Are there any products that you remember as being accurate in their packaging, or any that really stood out with the exaggerations?
From my understanding of what we were able to find after we ran those analyses was that there's not necessarily a clear correlation with any of the groups that we were able to study, where each of them, despite the number of claims they may have had, represent their actual healthiness of them, which was really interesting since we were going based off of um, Colin's understanding that if you do have more claims on a product, it might not be the best food source for you to buy at a grocery store. So we did end up finding off of the item category itself. So these categories, we were basing them off of the USDA. And in general, we did see that there is a clear association with, general categories of your fruits, vegetables, having better Nutri-Scores and nutrition scores compared to items that are conventionally less healthy, like your sugars and fats. We were able to, despite not lining exactly what our study wanted to figure out, whether or not food claims on the front packaging correlated with healthiness, but we did reinforce the commonly accepted nutritional guidance that looking at foods like fruits and vegetables and having your diet be more supportive of those things, as opposed to having your diet be overly, sugarified, is what I'll put it in quotes as, is really, really interesting to continue to be part of our medical guidance. And I think that's what our study was able to reinforce.
Every time I go shopping for my family, once or twice a week, because I love going to Wegmans. There's so many things there. It fills me with ambition for the cool, yummy things that I can cook and make. But boy, the package labels just drive me nuts. One that just sticks in my craw is butter announces that it is gluten-free. Right? We need a label to try to make us think, oh, it's free of gluten, even though it's made from milk, which of course is not made from wheat. Of course it's gluten-free. It may as well say that it's plutonium-free. And yet they are just dying to put anything on the label to attract you and make you think that there's something healthy and favorable, and why don't you grab me and put me in your cart? So if I wasn't already attuned to this before the study, certainly am now.
Well, before we wrap up, I was going to get advice from each of you on 5 different things. Can we start out with your favorite protein source? Dr. Steinberg, you want to go first?
I'm not a big meat eater, but I do like beans and some chicken, but a lot of my favorite foods are elsewhere, like vegetables and carbohydrates.
Ms. Venkatesh?
Say my favorite protein source, I'm gonna have to agree with Dr. Steinberg with the chicken. I really like marinating my chicken in a lot of different things. So I'll do something that's like lemon flavored, or I'll do it in like a Thai curry, which is always really fun at dinner time. It's really fun to kind of work with different meats, but I really like chicken.
How about your favorite vegetable and how to prepare it?
I would say for me, I'm pretty big on broccoli, surprisingly. I usually just saute it or I'll fry it in the pan pretty much. Again, I'm not any sort of chef, but I really like broccoli, so I think that's probably a good thing.
I'm right there with you. Broccoli is my favorite vegetable with nice leafy greens of arugula and spinach for salads. But for 20 years, I've been going to the farmer's market all summer and fall and getting basil and grinding it up to make pesto. By doing so, I got my kids to actually eat broccoli by making, pasta and broccoli with basil and garlic and salt and all that yummy stuff, which, given that my kids don't eat too many other healthy things, it's the best thing I've got going for my parenting success.
Your favorite high fiber food?
I'd say on mine end, it might have to be blueberries. I always have blueberries in the morning with my granola or cereal, and I always eat them in the evenings right before, I end up wrapping up for the day, and I just love them. I eat them all the time.
And I would say broccoli again, spinach, arugula, and apples. Love apples. I definitely enjoy an apple for breakfast or lunch every day.
Do you have a least expensive, most healthy meal that you can share with us?
I like to make risotto, which is inexpensive because it's just rice and then whatever vegetables are lying around. And maybe a can of tomatoes and chop up some onions and some garlic, maybe toss in some Parmesan cheese.
I would say for me, you know, I really like having pasta. I really like mixing it up a little bit. I'll add different vegetables. So again, with my broccoli that I really enjoy, or I'll throw in like, some carrots sometimes, which is, interesting. Again, I'm no chef, so I just start throwing things in and hopefully it works. And I think it tastes pretty good. So I also like doing like red sauce, or you can put in a white sauce and add in that protein again, which is really great. So, pasta I think is a good bet.
Well, finally, dessert or a sweet treat that's not too unhealthy.
I'm not sure if this really counts as a dessert, but I really enjoy it. I like in the middle of the day, like making trail mix. So I'll throw in, I won't lie, like M&Ms or some chocolate chips. I really mix it in with some peanuts, or I'll put in even cashews, pistachios sometimes, or throw in some granola, which is also really high in fiber. I like eating that throughout the day. And then maybe in terms of an actual dessert in the evening, again, you can't really go wrong with fruit. And, a little bit of chocolate never hurt anybody. Just a little bit, though.
I'm afraid that I'm not striving for healthy when it comes to dessert. If I'm going to eat dessert, which is not too often, I want it to be really good. My favorite dessert is devastatingly unhealthy, but it does hail from my year in Oswego doing Upstate's rural medicine program, where I lived there for a year and did a year of medical school. There is a dynamite farm stand out on Route 104A called Ontario Orchards, and they have a black and white cookie, which is more like a small frisbee made of a thick, dense, chewy brownie covered in a just thick layer of vanilla and chocolate frosting.
Well, I thank both of you for making time for this interview.
Thank you so much for having us.
Oh, it's a pleasure to share. Thank you so much for having us.
My guests have been Dr. Joshua Steinberg, an assistant professor in family medicine at Upstate, and Shruti Venkatesh, a student in Upstate's Norton College of Medicine. The Informed Patient is a podcast covering health, science, and medicine brought to you by Upstate Medical University in Syracuse, New York, and produced by Jim Howe, with sound engineering by Bill Brokel and graphic design by Dan Cameron. Find our archive of previous episodes at upstate.edu/informed. If you enjoyed this episode, please invite a friend to listen. You can also rate and review the Informed Patient podcast on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you tune in. This is your host, Amber Smith, thanking you for listening.